Let's get some more perspective now. Once again, tonight we've got some of the best legal, political, and reporting minds in the business here with me. Sean Wu, Laura Coates, Gloria Borger, Kirsten Powers, former presidential candidate Rick Santorum, and in some far-off distant land called New York, CNN chief legal analyst Jeffrey Toobin, a creature of New York. So, Gloria, the defendant, there's a lot of stuff that just seems normal now, but when I saw that retweet from the president is defending an image that shows his own deputy attorney general behind bars.
I mean, you could say it was shocking, but it isn't shocking anymore. That's what's so shocking about it, is that he is accusing, effectively, his own deputy attorney general of treason. And it just seems to me he's accusing Bob Mueller of being Joe McCarthy. And the rage that we're seeing now seems to be getting more and more frantic every single day. And I think it's because the walls are kind of closing in on him. And maybe Manafort's attorney has been telling him things that he's not happy to hear because he's been keeping him informed on what's been going on in the Mueller negotiations. And Giuliani has said they knew that it wasn't going well. And so, I think this is a president that is under an awful lot of stress because he seems to be spending all of his time, tweeting about
Laura, it is a little ironic for the president to be talking about Joe McCarthy in a negative way when the president's idol, Roy Cohn, was the right-hand man of Joe McCarthy. I mean, he was like the snake, behind the power.
Yeah. Did you want to have common sense as part of his? I mean, it's hard to actually inject here because it is ironic. It's hypocritical. And, of course, what's so shocking is the president has essentially tried to create his own list of people who he thinks are his political adversaries, are his enemies, including the press, people who were required by law and ethical obligations to recuse themselves, Jeff Sessions, somebody who was entitled and required to actually appoint a special counsel, Rod Rosenstein. He's accusing people of doing the wrong thing when they are required to do that which they did. And so that's really difficult for people to wrap their minds around, especially because, remember, the President of the United States is the head of the executive branch, whose role it is to faithfully ensure the laws are faithfully executed. If you don't understand that people need to actually do just that and follow the law, then of course everything that follows that will be hypocritical, will not have common sense logic. And Gloria's right. I mean, you get hotter under the collar the closer you are to the flames. And every statement that he makes, everything entices Mueller and the scrutiny, a special counsel, to say, why is the lady protesting so much?
Senator Santorum, do you think Rod Rosenstein belongs behind bars, or do you are you immune at this point to the president's retweets or tweets?
I guess yes. The answer is I think we all are immune to the way the president interacts on Twitter. I think Rod Rosenstein has made a lot of bad decisions as Deputy Attorney General, and I don't believe it should have been an independent probe. I think that should have been handled internally within the Justice Department. Having said all that, that is not an appropriate retweet on the part of the president, but again, that's par for the course.
Jeff, from a legal standpoint, the fact the president says he's not ruling out a pardon for Paul Manafort, I assume he was asked by the New York Post about this. Could he be accused of sending a message to Manafort?
He sure could, and he sure could be. It could be obstruction of justice. I mean, you started the program talking about, Nixon. I mean, this idea that the pardon power is absolute is not true. If someone walks into the Oval Office with a suitcase full of cash and says, pardon somebody in return for the cash, that's not protected. And to use the pardon power to interfere with a pending investigation, which is the only interpretation possible of what the president was saying today, that is an obstruction of justice. Now, remember, we are in the realm, criminal prosecution is off the table. He's president. They can't be prosecuted. This is now a political matter of impeachment. Nancy Pelosi, Jerry Nadler, the new chairman of the Judiciary Committee, they've said they're not interested in pursuing impeachment as long as it's impossible in the Senate. But is it in fact obstruction of justice? Could the House of Representatives conclude that this abuse of the pardon power is obstruction of justice? Absolutely.
Shan, do you think he was sending a message to Manafort?
I think he was. And to Gloria's point, why could the tension be increasing on the president right now? this whole odd joint defense agreement between Manafort and the Trump lawyers, that's a very reckless thing to do. I mean, you just don't do that when someone's cooperating. And the most intriguing aspect of that is that could convert the lawyers into witnesses.
Exactly.
If Trump's team is telling Manafort, hey, don't say this, ease up on that, say something else, that is obstruction, and they could end up having to testify about that. Would essentially pierce the privilege aspect of it.
They could also convert to defendants themselves, because
Absolutely.
although impeachment may be off the table if it's a foolhardy, quest by the Democrats in the House to try to go to the Senate, that doesn't actually apply to somebody like a lawyer. Right. Maybe Giuliani. I don't know what he's done. No one really does. But the idea of somebody who's not the president of the United States maybe dangling a carrot and influencing or trying to impede an investigation, well, that actually could be something that you could go into. Now, the jury's still out on that, but it's a possibility.
Yeah. Well, let me just get Kirsten here for a second, because, I mean, it is fascinating. One of the things I do find fascinating about this president is that he does, for all the lack of transparency, he is also incredibly accidentally transparent.
Yeah.
I mean, he does say stuff which is in his head, which many presidents wouldn't say.
Right, yeah. Well, I also think another thing that is different, and maybe the lawyers can correct me if this isn't right, this as a layperson it seems this way, that pardons, I think other presidents were more judicious, obviously, in considering who they gave pardons to and followed more of a process. But I think because Donald Trump clearly doesn't do that, and he sent the message very clearly from the beginning that he wasn't going to do that, it opens up these kinds of situations where you have somebody angling for a pardon the way Manafort is in such an overt way that I just don't think in the past you would have been able to do that. You wouldn't have been able to anticipate what the president would do.
But Jeff Toobin, I mean, you've had plenty of sleazy people trying to get pardons from the president in the dead of night as they're, leaving the door of the White House after their term is just about up.
That's right. I mean, Bill Clinton, really shamed himself by pardoning Mark Rich, a fugitive, his brother. I mean, the end of the Clinton administration was really a very bad low point. If I can just go back to the lawyers for a second. I mean, I don't think there's anything necessarily improper about lawyers talking to each other when they're all being investigated. I think what's really bizarre about all this is that Manafort's lawyers are telling all this stuff to the Trump lawyers and everyone else, even though they're supposedly cooperating with the Mueller investigation. I think that just shows how much Manafort has given up on the legal system and is putting all his bets on getting a pardon, because he's just, that's his only hope, because he's now burnt all his bridges with Mueller.
We got to take a quick break. We'll talk more about this when we come back.